Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Hello, I am Teacher Marvy.
And I'm Teacher Hazel. And today in this video, we're going to teach you the standard deviation in statistics. Are you ready?
But before that, let's have a game. Game is simple. Guess the words that are being asked in the following. Answer them according to what you have learned from your previous lesson in statistics. Are you ready?
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Did you remember all the answers in the game?
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
In this video, we are going to encounter them again to get the standard deviation. But first, what is standard deviation?
Audio Jungle.
Standard deviation is one of the measures of dispersion in statistics.
Audio Jungle.
Measures of dispersion describes how much the numbers within a dataset vary. Standard deviation is a measure of how spread out a dataset is, denoted by S or lowercase sigma. It is also the positive square root of the variance.
And same as the standard deviation is a measure of how spread out a data is, denoted by S squared or lowercase sigma squared. Later, we will see the difference between the two. Formula of the variance for the ungrouped data is S squared is equal to the summation of square deviation of X and mean all over N, wherein X is the individual value of observation and N is the total number of observation in a data.
Take note, the uppercase N is only used as a denominator when calculating the whole population, while N-1 is used as a denominator when calculating the sample variance. Here is an example of the application of the formula. The data shows the scores of Ronnie from the recent exams he took in 5 subjects. Before we proceed to the computation of the variance, we need to get the mean of the data. Do you still remember how to get it? Right! Using the formula, mean is equal to the summation of X all over N. Substitute the values and we get the answer of 84. After we get the mean, using the formula for the population variance, we're going to put each value we get from the deviations and squared deviations into the table so that we will not be confused.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
values of the squared deviations to get its summation. Now, proceed to the formula. Substitute the value we obtained and we get the answer of 6.8. Now, how about for the group data? For the group data, we use the formula S squared is equal to the summation of the product of squared deviations and frequencies all over n, or n minus 1 for the sample variance, where x is the midpoint of the interval. Let's have an example.
Audio Jungle.
Data shows the test scores in math of 25 students in the 10th grade. Just like what we did on the ungrouped data, we're going to get first the mean for our data. Using this table, let's put the midpoint of each interval into a column. Now to get the mean, we use the formula mean is equal to the summation of the product of x and f all over n. Let's put the values of the product of x and f into another column in the table. After getting the values for the column xf, let's get its summation by adding all of its values. Did you get the answer? Now, back to the formula of the mean. Substitute the value we obtained and we get the answer of 79.8. After we get the mean, we can now proceed to getting the variance. Before that, what do you think should we use? Population variance or sample variance? The sample variance. Did you get it right? We will use the sample variance formula because the data only show the scores of the sample of 25 students in the 10th grade. Just like what we did on the example for the ungrouped data, we will add another 3 columns for deviation. Square deviation and square deviation times frequency on the table just to make it organized.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Now, for the final step, before we substitute for the formula, let's get the summation of the last column. Then,
Audio Jungle.
we can now proceed it to the formula.
Audio Jungle.
We get the answer of 91.42. Did you also get the same answer? Great!
Now that we know how to get the variance, we can now easily get the standard deviation for both ungrouped and grouped data. Do you still remember our definition for the standard deviation? Standard deviation is simply the positive square root of the variance. Its basic formulas are
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
by understanding its definition. Let's use the first and second example we used earlier for both the ungrouped and grouped data to get the standard deviation of each. What is the standard deviation of this example?
Audio Jungle.
2.61. Using the formula, we substitute the value and we got the result.
Audio Jungle.
Same thing to do in this example, we get the answer of 9.56. Did you notice the difference between the answers we get from the variance and standard deviation? As you can see, standard deviations produce smaller values than variance did. It is much easier to compare two different data sets using small values. That's why many statisticians use this measure of dispersion. Additionally, compared to other measures of dispersion, standard deviation is the most reliable to use because it uses all the values in the data set.
For us to further understand the standard deviation, let's enumerate its properties.
Audio Jungle.
Why do we get the standard deviation of a dataset? In statistics, we don't only use the standard deviation to measure the distance of each value from each other and from the mean. It's also better used in comparing two or more datasets. Here are the examples of where we commonly use that standard deviation. We use standard deviation in sports to know which team scores consistently and which team scores inconsistently. In school, the teacher can use the standard deviation to evaluate the score of the students in the given quiz. And in business, it is often used by investors to measure the risk of a stock or a stock portfolio.
Get the standard deviation of these data sets.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.